Shalom, shalom again, Jerry and Miriam and Brian.
Shalom.
Tonight we're going to read, who knows the reading for tonight? Brian, do you know what it is?
I'm looking for
You're looking for the calendar. You're cheating.
I can't
Give
see
me a
it.
hint. What letter does it start with? S,
T.
right?
T.
E.
T. T like Thomas.
Oh,
Oh, that's
Well, the reading for tonight is called Terumah. It's about the
Terumah, that's
contributions.
right.
And when I first read it through, usually I try to read it through a couple of times. First time I read it through, I went, oh no, it's going to be so boring. But the second time I read it through, I started to picture myself there and look at the details in a way that an artisan, Jerry, you're an artisan. And I think as we read it, just picture the details of this. It's absolutely, to me, it's absolutely astounding once I saw it in a new light. So let me share the screen and let us begin. And Brian, if someone comes in the room in the meantime, please put yourself on mute. Okay, what's going on here? Why can't I share the screen? Ah, here we go. Okay. I'm going to move this over. Sorry. I'm having technical difficulties tonight. All right. Terumah. So just to go back to, I like to continue it on, even though the rabbi, because the last verse of the last portion, which was Mishpatim, it ends with Moses went inside the cloud. He ascends Mount Sinai, where he remains for 40 days and 40 nights. Suddenly, we're jumping to Terumah. Now, I remember the rabbi telling us that Terumah is not chronologically correct here, because here it says God speaks to Moses. I don't. It to me it could either be that God is speaking to Moses immediately about this, or maybe he's not. I don't know, and that to me is not the most important thing. But what I look at here, he says, tell the Israelite people to, it says bring me, but the word is yikhu, from kachat, like take me, with the understanding that they already had these gifts, and we already know that the gifts were given to them when they left Egypt. They were given all kinds of things just to get rid of them, and God put it on the hearts of the Egyptians to give them these gifts. And it says here, you shall accept gifts from me, from every person, and the word in Hebrew is dabenu livo, whose heart is willing. Here it says so moved. They had a willing heart. Now the word terumah comes from the word rum, which means lift up. It's like our hearts are lifted up when we take things to God. It's really important about this idea of a willing heart. And the first thing that I was thinking of, are we born with a willing heart? What makes us have a willing heart? Can a willing heart be developed? And if we look at Exodus, where are we here? Exodus 24, if we go back to 24, 3-7, it says, I'm not going to go back, but I'll tell you what it says. It says, Moses went and spoke to the people. He repeated all the commands, the mitzvot of the Lord, and all his mishpatim, all his chukim. And all the people answered with one voice, saying, all the things that the Lord has commanded we will do. And then he repeats it. When he took a record of the covenant, and he's reading it aloud to the people, and they said again, all that the Lord has spoken, we will faithfully do. And it's naseh venishma. So this venishma First, it says we are going to do, and then we're going to hear, or we're going to listen. Because the first thing, in order to build trust, we need to start doing. It's first we do, and then we learn to trust as we watch the results of the things that we do unfold. Now, God is going to continuously test us in our lives in the same way He did through those 38 years in the desert. And at that time, He was turning our focus away from the gods of Egypt to the one God of Israel. But it's the same with us, exactly the same with us today. Where is our focus? Is our focus on ourselves, on the things that we do, on the world, the gods of the world, on the things that are calling out there? What is our focus? And how can we have a willing heart? I remember when I first started working and I was deeply in debt. And I had just turned to God, and I had learned the principles of tithing. And I remember at the beginning, my salary was very low. I had 2 children to take care of. I had to rebuild my life. I was deeply in debt. And I remember sitting down with the bills that I had to pay, and I was looking at the tithing that I was supposed to give. And if I tithed, I didn't think I would have enough to pay my rent. And I thought, how am I going to do this? But then I remembered in Malachi 3, where God is speaking to the Israelites, and He says, "You are robbing me." And the Israelites said to Him, "Well, how are we robbing you?" And He said, "Bring your tithes and your offerings to me, and see if I will not pour out the storehouses of heaven so that you will not be able to move." And I remembered that. And He said, "Test me in this. Test me." And I said, "Okay, God, I'm going to test you." And I wrote out the check for the tithe. And by the time I had to pay my rent, a bonus came through at work that paid for all my bills and including allowed me to pay my rent. So I had to take the step of faith first. I had to do. Write the check was due. And then I watched God go to work. And that's what God is trying to show us in all the things that He asks us to do. Trust Him by doing first. And then it starts to describe the gifts. These are the gifts that you shall accept from the Israelites. And it begins with the most precious thing of all, gold. And gold has the qualities that it doesn't erode. It doesn't. It's not like other metals. It's pure. It's beautiful gold. Then it's silver, which is a little less, and then we get to copper, and we're going to see more copper coming up as we read. Then we see the different yarns, the different materials that we're going to be used, and we'll see how they're going to be used soon. Blue and purple and crimson. These are magnificent colors. Fine linen. This linen would be used to make the costumes. These are all these are going to be for all the furnishings inside the Mishkan and outside the Mishkan. The goat's hair, which is not very attractive, but it would be used later, we'll see, for the outside. These tanned ram skins, leather. There were no dolphins in the desert. I don't know why they said dolphin. Acacia wood. Acacia was a type of wood that had a lot of thorns. So they had to work hard to get rid of the thorns before they could use the wood. Oil for the lighting, because they were going to make the menorahs. Spices for the anointing oil. Aromatic incense. Lapis lazuli and other stones for setting. These would be for the ephod and the breastplate. All these were things that God was showing Moses as he was up in the mountain. He was giving a picture of what he would have to do. And it says, V'yasuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham. And that's a beautiful song. ועשו לי מקדש, ושכנתי בתוכם, ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, and we will bless God from now and forevermore. Now, did God need a Mishkan? Did he need a building? Can he live in any structure? He would dwell, we were doing this not for him, but it's so that he would dwell among his people. Is he still here with us today in the same way? I see him in my life. In our Haftorah portion in Isaiah 66, it says, "This is what God said, heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where could you build a house for me? What place could serve as my abode? All this was made by my hand, and thus it came into being, declares God. Yet to such a one do I look, to the poor and contrite spirit, who is concerned about my word." That's what he's looking for. He's not interested in these great religious structures. We see these huge temples in Egypt, and today these massive churches with all their beauty inside, big beautiful synagogues with all the decor. These elevate man, where they display their version of their gods. And what does he want? A humble, a contrite spirit, those who love his words. And I remember Yeshua said, "Blessed be the poor in spirit, for they shall inherit the earth." This is what he's speaking about. You know, the Pharaoh was the epitome of pride, as all are the boastful leaders of this world who think that they can replace the God of Israel, Yud He Vav He. So here it's in verse 8, Moses, where are we now? Verse 8, God is telling Moses that he is going to show him the pattern of the Mishkan. You see here in verse 8? No, 9. "Exactly as I show you the pattern of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and the pattern of all its furnishings, so shall you make it." So during his 40 days and 40 nights there, God would give him a vision of this. It's like what was in heaven, and we can't even imagine what is in the heavens. It's going to be replicated on earth. That's how Moses was going to be making these things. "They shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long." Now a cubit is 18 inches. So this is 2.5, 36.5, plus 9, and a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit and a half high. Overlay it with pure gold. Imagine what it looked like. This is the ark of acacia wood. So it's a beautiful wood. And this ark would be where the covenant, the pact, the tablets would be placed. And later, the manna and the almond rod of Aaron that bloomed would be placed in this ark. And it would be overlaid with pure gold, inside and out, and make a gold molding all around. They were to cast 4 gold rings for it.
You know what's interesting?
What?
Like, I just had a visual thing. When somebody talks, like nowadays, people talk about gold and silver and jewels and riches, and it's all external. And what, you know, we say, and even when a person says, I'm not really.
You put yourself on mute, Miriam.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not really what?
Okay, so when people say, for example, I'm not materialistic, like everything, like gold symbolizes a kind of materialism and wealth and riches. And here God is asking us to use these things for the ark, because the true riches are not in our riches that we think are wealth, but the same symbols that God here uses to display the wealth that comes from a relationship with God, people just, dissociate it from its real source. Like things that are cut off from the reality of their creation become so empty. And yet people now, they don't look at gold and silver as just a covering for something beautiful in your heart. I'm just seeing the metaphor, I'm
Yeah,
seeing,
that's beautiful. If we go down to the old port, there's a church there, and the dome is all in gold. It's probably just gold paint, like the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. And immediately your eyes are attracted to this because it's so brilliant and it's so beautiful. And that's what God is wanting us to do, to take our focus away from their temple, the temples of Egypt, and attract us, use this to attract as to what is going to lay within. We're to take our focus and put it on this ark, which is going to hold the pact, the Ten Commandments, and this ark would be carried by the Levites later when we went into battle against our enemies. It's absolutely magnificent. And I think Harrison Ford was looking for the Ark of the Covenant,
yeah,
was
yeah.
in the movie.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The Raiders of the Lost Ark, exactly. Poles of acacia wood, overlay them with gold, insert the poles into the ring on the sides of the walls of the ark, and carrying the ark. The poles shall remain in the rings, and they shall not be removed from it. Deposit into the ark the tablets of the covenant, the brit that God is making us. Here it's the edut, the Ten Commandments, which I will give you. And you shall make a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long, and a cubit and a half wide. And then make 2 cherubim, cherubs of gold. Here to me, it's like I'm picturing these angels with their wings. You see them hovering over, like looking down into like over the, um, what's going to be inside, protecting them. It's like He bringing a piece of heaven down to earth. Make them of hammered work. He doesn't say how. He gives us the design. Moses had a picture in his head, but then he would have to explain it later on, and we're going to see Bezalel and Oholiab. These were workers. Moses wasn't going to make them all. God would choose, Moses would choose these men in whom the who are artisans who would be able to make these things, make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the cover.
Just one thing I'm forgetting. I know Exodus 20, Shemot 20,
Yeah.
God gave the Ten Commandments, the 10
No,
laws.
he read them to us.
He read them.
He didn't give them to us yet. Moses was going up to get them engraved, but
Okay, he went up, then he came. Okay, I'm
no, he
missing.
didn't go up. They were all standing around the base of Mount Sinai.
So okay, now he's going to
He
get them.
spoke them, and Moses
Right.
spoke them out
Okay,
loud
at
in a
one
hearing.
point, they're smashed. Moses gets angry at the
Not
golden
yet.
calf. So there are 2 sets. One is smashed
Yeah, we
later on.
haven't even got to the first
Right,
set
right,
yet.
but that will happen. Yeah, okay.
Yes, yes, yes. So we make one cherub at one end and the other cherub at the other end. Just picture this, how beautiful. And one piece with the cover shall you make the cherubim at its 2 ends. You know, Miriam, when sometimes we go into a store and you'll see something that just catches your eye, and it's like you take it in your hand and you look at it and you just love it. Can you imagine if you were there seeing this ark with all covered with gold, with
Right.
the poles covered with gold, and the cherubs covered with gold? How magnificent. And here they shall have their wings spread out above, shielding the cover with their wings. And they're going to look at each other, the faces being turned toward the cover. Place the cover on the top of the ark. After depositing it inside the ark, the pact that I will give you. Imagine the beauty. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak to you. I will impart to you from above the cover, from between the two cheruvim who are on top of the ark of the pact, all that I will command you concerning the Israelite people. Make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits. Overlay it with pure gold, and make a gold molding around it. This was going to take them, who knows, maybe all this would take them a year to do. This is a lot of work. Obviously, they had everything that they needed from Egypt, but it was going to take a lot of work. Make a rim of hand's breadth around it, and make a gold molding for its rim around about. Make 4 gold rings for it, and attach the ring to the 4 corners of its 4 legs. The ring shall be next to the rim as holders for poles to carry the table. Make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. By these the table shall be carried. Now, I was watching the other night, I watched a documentary about a magnificent hotel in London for the very, very wealthy. I mean, they would pay more money per night that you and I can even imagine, more than I make in a year. And well, not per night, but it was absolutely a fortune. And here, the bowls, the ladles, the jars, and the jugs, which would be to offer the sacrifices, but the offerings, the libation, were liquid offerings. Make them of pure gold. And in this hotel, they had dishes that had some stripes. And then a cup was made of silver and one of gold. And when you put the cup onto the plate, the stripes on the plate reflected into the gold, and it was just so magnificent. So imagine what this must have looked like. They were all the bowls covered with gold. And on the table you shall set the bread of display to be before me always. You shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be of hammered work, its base, its shaft, its cups, its calyxes. I wanted to know what this word means. Look what it says here for calyxes. Calyxes are the sepals of a flower, typically forming a whorl that encloses the petals and forms a protective layer around a flower in bud. Imagine the delicate work that had to go into making this. And this is not a lampstand. This is the menorah. The menorah that would be made to shine its light inside, because there were no windows in the Mishkan. So the lamp, the menorah would shine its light. And it was so magnificent. 6 branches shall issue from its sides. 3 branches from one side and 3 branches from the other side of the menorah. On one branch shall be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with a calyx and petals. On the next branch would be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals, and the same for all the 6 branches coming out of the menorah. And on the menorah itself would be 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals. A calyx of one piece with it, under a pair of branches. I mean, for me, I can't even begin to imagine what this would look like. So I don't know, maybe the two of you who are more artistic than I am, maybe you could picture how you would draw this, how you would make this. To me, it's astounding. A calyx, one piece with
Well,
it.
isn't it kind of what a beautiful flower looks like, with when you look at the cups, like the different layers of flower flesh, flower, there's different leaves that cover parts of the buds, and it's like a beautiful layered. Remember crinolines when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Crinolines and layered dresses and
Yes.
like very beautiful.
Yeah. And the other thing about the calyx, it says here in that was the one I read you before was in botany. This is in zoology. In zoology, it's a cup-like cavity or structure, a portion of the pelvis of a mammalian kidney. So even within the body, we have a same type of structure. Isn't that interesting? The cavity in a calcareous coral skeleton that surrounds the polyp, the plated body of a crinoid, excluding the stalk and arms. I don't even know what these things are, but it's like there's so many things that God created that are magnificent pieces of art.
Even when you see things like um, even certain insects, if you can get past your
Yes.
dislike of insects, and you look at them, they're quite magnificent. They have like layers of like what do they call it, of the sort of armor of an insect, and sometimes you'll see a glowing like almost turquoise. If you look at a fly, you'll see some turquoise sheen on some of their,
Yes,
and their
exactly.
wings are very
And their
beautiful.
eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
everything, a tortoise. If you look at its shell, it's there's so many like different shines and squares and designs. It's like
Yeah.
really.
The calyxes and their stems shall be of one piece with it, the whole of it a single hammered piece of pure gold. The entire thing would be a hole in a single hammered piece of gold. That takes incredible genius of creation. Make it 7 lamps. The lamps shall be so mounted as to give the light on the front. Its tongs and fire pans of pure gold. When these things were all going to be for offerings to God. And it shall be made with all these furnishings out of a talent of pure gold. Note well and follow the patterns for them that are being shown you on this mountain. So what Moses is being shown, he had to remember in order to be able to convey it to the others when they were to be made. Now, this is going to be for the outside. This is inside the tabernacle. And very few people would see it. And some of these things would be only, the ark would be put into the Holy of Holies, that the high priest, the Kohen HaGadol, would go in only once a year on Yom Kippur. So most of the people didn't see it. They weren't privy to the beauty. So why would this beauty be reserved for only one man, only once a year? What does this represent for us today? Can you think about that, or does
It's true, eh? Mm.
I mean, look at the details that went into it. The menorah for me would come to represent us as being a light to the nations, or Lagoyim, and the whole of Israel were supposed to be like Kohanim for the world, and then we'd have one Kohen HaGadol. But really, I know that the Christians would say that Jesus took the place of the high priest because he was the one who sacrificed, but that's really pushing it. As for the Mishkan, make of it 10 strips of cloth. Make these of fine twisted linen, of purple, blue, purple, and crimson yarn, with a design of the cherubim worked into it. Imagine the intricacy of the work that had to be done of this. The length of each cloth shall be 28 cubits. So when I looked up, a cubit was 18 inches. And so 28 cubits, 28 times 18 is 504, which means it would be 42 feet long by 6 feet wide. Here, the width of each cloth, 42 feet long. That's long. And by 6 feet wide. And all the cloths are to have the same measurements. 5 of the cloths shall be joined one to the other, and the other 5 shall be joined to one another. And then they were to make loops of blue wool on the edge of the outermost cloth of one set, and do the same at the edge of the outermost cloth of the other set. They had to make 50 loops on one cloth. Now, I went and looked at my curtains. I have 4 panels of curtains in my bedroom. Each curtain had only 9 loops. Here is 50 loops on one cloth. Imagine how huge that is. 50 loops on the edge of the end cloth on the other set, and the loops to be opposite one another. I can't even begin to imagine what this looks like. Then they were to make 50 gold clasps and couple the cloths to one another with the clasps so that the tabernacle becomes one whole. Now, this was on the inside. Now they're going to make something on the outside. You shall then make cloths of goat hair for a tent over the tabernacle and make the cloths 11 in number. Now, the goat hair was ugly hair. There's little short hairs if you look at a goat. It's not like the sheep, all woolly. It wasn't like the beautiful blue and crimson that we read before, the purple and crimson, which would be on the inside. And it's showing us that on the outside of the Mishkan, it was unattractive for the people. It was only on the inside that they could see the beauty. The length of each cloth would be 30 cubits, which is 45 feet. How did they make these in the desert? And I wondered, did they use just the hair of the goats? Were the
Must have
goats
been
offered,
the goat's
or
skin.
did they
How could
offer the
they-
goats and then use the pelts?
Maybe. How could
Probably.
you, a goat doesn't have enough hair to separate it, whatever, must have
Yeah,
been,
they must have used
poor
the pelts.
goats.
Yeah, well, they ate.
No, I know, I'm joking.
And the width of each cloth would be 4 cubits. So 4 times 18 is, well, whatever, we'll figure it out. 11 cloths to have the same measurements. Join 5 of the cloths by themselves. I hope he took notes because I don't know how he would remember all this. And the other 6 cloths by themselves. Fold over the 6th cloth at the front of the tent. Now, as I'm reading all this, it's funny, I was thinking, my friend Cindy was designing her backyard for her daughter's wedding. Excuse me. And she showed me what she was going through to make the ark. And she was making beautiful flowers along with it and designing the whole backyard. It was beautiful. But it took her such a long time. Imagine what this took.
You know what's interesting? Like I'm thinking, it's natural to think when you're reading this, all these things about how specific the instructions were. You know, it would be easy to think, well, like, why such specific? It's so boring in a way, but it's, to me, it's so not boring because God is telling us this is the way we should build it. Can you imagine if it were left on we were left to do it? We'd have like Taj Mahals and all these things that we'd forget about glorifying God and we'd be glorifying ourselves. But I mean, I find it really interesting that the instructions are so specific. What
Exactly.
used to bore me now kind of I find so incredibly beautiful and inspiring
I
because
know.
it's God's presence just reflected in all this external material.
And he has an order for things.
Right.
There's
Exactly.
order and beauty.
Right.
Make 50 loops on the edge of the outermost cloth of one set, 50 loops on the end, 50 loops on the edge of the cloth on the other set, 50 copper clasps. Fit the clasps into the loops and couple the tent together so that it becomes one whole. Copper doesn't have the same beauty as gold, and this was going to be on the outside. I remember seeing somebody put a beautiful copper roof not far from where I live, but it wasn't long that it oxidized and that gorgeous copper color turned into just an ugly green, had no sheen. And this was going to be on the outside. The beauty was on the inside, which shows us that, so many people spend so much time with all the externals, going for facelifts and making themselves beautiful on the outside, spending so much money on making themselves gorgeous on the outside. There's nothing wrong with making ourselves look good, but it's what shines on the inside that's more important. And that's what I think God is trying to show us. As for the overlapping excess of the cloths of the tent, the extra half cloth shall overlap the back of the tabernacle, while the extra cubit at each end of each length of tent cloth shall hang down to the bottom of the two sides of the tabernacle and cover it. Look how specific. Nothing was left out. Make for the tent a covering of tanned ram skins and a covering, I don't know what kind of, it's not dolphin, it's some kind of leather above. And here they had to make planks for the tabernacle of acacia wood, these planks. And all this would have to be taken down and put back up everywhere they traveled. They would have to take these planks down. They would have to rebuild the tabernacle wherever they went. The length of each plank was 10 cubits. That's 18 times 10. And the width of each plank, a cubit and a half. Each plank shall have 2 tenons. A tenon here, hold on. A tenon is, oh boy, I can't see it. Hold on a second. Put that up. Let me close you. Sorry. Come on. Here, tenon is a projecting piece of wood made for insertion into a mortise into another piece. So each plank shall have 2 tenons parallel to each other, and do the same with all the planks of the tabernacle. Of the planks of the
I guess that's
Mishkan,
what you call tongue and groove,
I suppose, yeah. They had some way they had to
some
join
kind
them.
of tongue and groove. Yeah.
Make 20 planks on the south, 40 silver sockets under the 20 planks, 2 sockets under one plank. Somebody in construction would see this, would get it. And 2 sockets under each following plank for its 2 tenons. And for the other side wall of the tabernacle on the north side, 20 planks with their 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under one plank and 2 sockets under another plank. And the rear of the tabernacle to the west makes 6 planks. And make 2 planks for the corners of the tabernacle at the rear. They shall match at the bottom and terminate alike at the top inside one ring. Thus shall it be both with them. They shall form 2 corners. Thus there shall be 8 planks with their sockets of silver, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under the first, 2 sockets under the other. Make bars of acacia wood, 5 for the planks on the one side wall of the tabernacle. They had a lot of acacia wood, and all those were thorny wood, so it would take them a lot of work to make it smooth, and it's beautiful once it's worked. 5 bars for the planks on the other side of the tabernacle, 5 bars for the plank of the wall of the tabernacle at the rear to the west. The center bar halfway up the plank shall run from end to end. Overlay the planks with gold. Make their rings of gold as holders for the bar, and overlay the bars with gold. Then set up the tabernacle according to the manner of it that you were shown on the mountain. Make a curtain of purple, a blue, purple, and crimson yarns, fine twisted linen, and it shall have a design of the cherubs worked within it. Hang it on 4 posts of the acacia wood overlaid with gold, having hooks of gold set in 4 sockets of silver. This is going to be, look where it says, and this is another curtain which was going to be inside the Mishkan, separating the Holy of Holies. Hang the curtain under the clasps, carry the Ark of the Covenant there, and behind the curtain, so that the curtain shall serve you as a partition between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. So the outer was the Kadosh, and the inside was the Kadosh HaKadoshim. And these were heavy curtains. And that's where Aaron would go in once a year, the high priest. Place the cover on the ark, and the cover is called Ha-Kaporet. That's where we get the kippah, the chuppah, the Yom Kippur. These were the ideas, the covering. You know how we used to say, it's the day, Yom Kippur is the day of God's covering? Here they place the covering, Ha-Kaporet, on the ark of the pack in the Holy of Holies. Place a table outside the curtain, and the menorah by the south wall of the tabernacle, opposite the table, so that the menorah would shine toward the table, which is to be placed by the north wall. You shall make a screen for the entrance of the tent of blue, purple, and crimson, and fine twisted linen done in embroidery. Make 5 posts of acacia wood for the screen and overlay them with gold, their hooks being of gold, and cast for them 5 sockets of copper. You shall make the altar. Here, the altar is going to be where they would do the offerings of acacia wood, 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide. The altar is going to be a square, 3 cubits high. The horns on the 4 corners, the horns to be of one piece with it, and overlay it with copper. And I was looking at the element of copper. Copper is soft, it's malleable, it's ductile with a very high thermal and electric conductivity, so that when the offerings were made, it could sustain all that heat from the fire. Make the pails for removing the ashes, as well as its scrapers, its basins, flesh hooks. This is like, they were going to be like butchers. They had flesh hooks. They had to pick up the meat, and the fire pans. Make it all of copper so that it could hold that kind of heat. Make for it a grating of meshwork, again in copper. And on the mesh, make 4 copper rings at its 4 corners. This was like a huge sieve, so that when the offerings were burned, the ashes would go down underneath. Set the mesh below under the ledge of the altar so that it extends to the middle of the altar. And make poles for the altar, because they would have to carry this wherever they went. Poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with copper. The poles shall be inserted into the ring so that the poles remain on the 2 sides of the altar when it is carried. Remember, this was going to be carried throughout the desert. Make it hollow of boards, as you were shown on the mountain, so shall they be made. You shall make the enclosure of the tabernacle. On the south side, 100 cubits of hangings. Remember, 1 cubit is 18 inches. This is going to be 1,800 inches. How many feet is that? 150 feet of hangings of fine twisted linen, for the length of the enclosure on that side, with its 20 posts and their 20 sockets of copper. The hooks and bands of the copper would be of silver. Again, 100 cubits of hanging for its length along the north side, with its 20 posts and their 20 sockets of copper, and the hooks and bands of the posts to be of silver. What a huge undertaking this was. For the width of the enclosure, on the west side, 50 cubits of hanging with their 10 posts and their 10 sockets. I would say that all this would have taken place within the first year, maybe, I don't know how long they were going to be there making these things before they would start on their journey. Maybe it will tell us. For the width of the enclosure on the front or the east side, 50 cubits. 15 cubits of hangings on the one flank with their 3 posts and their 3 sockets.
Peggy, how long were they, when had they left Egypt? How long is it at this point? You remember?
I think it was it
2 years.
was it in the second year? I think they were in the second year.
Yeah, I
here.
think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they got to the base of Mount Sinai, I think it was the 3rd month. I'd have to go back and look. But I think there were going to be 38 more years, because right after this, now this is, I don't know exactly when this happened, but I know right after this, we're going to read how Moses comes back. The people are worshiping the golden calf, and that's when they're told that they're going to be another, they're going to be in the desert for another 38 years until that generation died off. For the gate, now, was it because of that? Or was it because of their constant complaining? Well, we'll get to that anyway. For the gate of the enclosure, a screen of 20 cubits of blue, purple, and crimson yard, 5 twisted linen, done in embroidery with their 4 posts and their 4 sockets. You know, I keep thinking that during their years of slavery, if they hadn't been slaves in Egypt, where they had to make all these things, they wouldn't have known how to do it. They would have been making these things for the Pharaoh. They weren't only building structures, they were doing a lot of this type of work. So they would have been trained during that period of time on how to do all these. All the posts round the enclosure shall be banded with silver. The hook shall be silver. The socket shall be copper. The length of the enclosure shall be 100 cubits. The width 50 cubits without, and the height 5 cubits with hangings, and fine twisted linen. The socket shall be of copper. All the utensils of the tabernacle, for all its service, as well as all its pegs, and all the pegs of the courts, shall be of copper. You know, it's funny, when I remember last year, I had so much trouble reading this. And it was really boring to me. And this year, suddenly, these same verses just came alive. And I find that with the Torah, that it's so amazing how every year things jump out at the pages at me. Like the whole idea of giving with a willing heart. It's hard to give with a willing heart. You know, it's easy to ruminate. Oh, should I really be giving them? You know, why am I giving? Giving is something that doesn't necessarily come natural to us.
Also,
And
I think a lot of people confuse, well, maybe it's not true, but giving and being obedient is not always easy, or maybe I'm wrong on this, but it's not always filled with joy. In
no,
my case, it hasn't
and
been.
God isn't asking us to be filled with joy.
But I'm saying a willing heart
Yeah.
just mean, like, I can only speak for myself, but sometimes, I go, I don't have enough money for my teeth. I don't have enough blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Go on and on.
Well, go
And
to Jerry. He'll do your teeth.
anyway, my point is that I just saw a lot of fakery in certain areas where people would be smiling and always pretending that everything was so joyous and easy and obedience was so it led to a lot of self-righteousness.
Right.
So I just think that without it being like a strict God with a rod type of thing, or obedience is because our base of our life is that we know that we're being led by a living God. But it doesn't mean we're not human. There are going to be times when we're, gee, how am I going to pay this or how am I going to pay that? I mean, so just to make it more realistic.
Exactly. It's all about learning to trust him. Everything that we'll see coming up, the whole idea of when we have the manna was provided in the desert, it was provided a double portion on the fifth day, on the sixth day, so that we wouldn't have to gather on Shabbat. And yet, how many people still went and tried to go out on Shabbat because they didn't trust that God
Yeah.
would keep providing? It's every single thing, the Shemitah, letting the land lie fallow, learning how to trust. We do not know how to trust God. And so we hold on to the things that we have. And yet, the more our hand is open, the more we give, the more we receive. But it's also, we have to look at the reasons that we're giving. Sometimes we're giving because we want to be liked. Sometimes we want people to say, "Oh, look how much she gave. Oh my goodness, her name has to be on a bench. Put the name up in lights. Look what she gave. Look what he gave." You know, people they buy the best seats in the synagogue. That's not what God is asking. He wants a humble heart from us, and He wants us. Yeshua said, "When you give, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." Don't, and it's hard. Like when I
Yeah.
give, I want people to know, look what I gave.
But you know what? There's a balance to that. Oh, yeah. To me, the balance is not to fight it too much.
Yeah,
Even if you sort of, oh, I'm doing this, or look at what I'm doing. Just talk to yourself and say, oh, to me, I go, okay, Miriam, it's enough, it's okay, but
yeah,
just move on, because you can't get embroiled in trying to. We can't fine tune every reaction we have. Then
no,
we end up becoming too introspective. That's my problem.
yeah,
Like, just okay. I'm human and I have these feelings.
right.
Yeah.
And the thing that amazes me also is in this little community, since our rabbi died, I'm always amazed that somehow we're able to meet our expenses by the end of the year.
Mm,
You know, we don't advertise, we don't ask for donations, we don't ask, and yet, sometimes it amazes me that, um, people don't stop to think about that things cost money to run. It's just natural.
right.
And I sometimes struggle with that. What do we do? Do we just come right out and ask? We need money for this, we need money for that. Like we don't have a building. In some ways, I'm happy we don't have a building because then we're able to have people like Mauricio lives in El Salvador and Sarai who lives in well, she came from Mexico, now she's in Texas. People who live in different parts of the country can tune in because we're on Zoom.
Yeah.
We're missing the communal, the gatherings that we used to have. We used to have a lot of gatherings. Thousands of people have come through our community, have come through this congregation. New congregations have spread from it. So many people are doing God's work because of us, and everything. And God knew that it would take money to build the tabernacle, but look who paid us. The Egyptians who held us in harsh slavery. They paid for everything.
It's true.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Anyways, it was an yes, Jerry.
I just have a comment and a question and a statement, whatever. Number one, what transmits electricity most? Does gold do more than silver, and silver does more than copper?
I am not an electrician.
I'm going to take a
I would
guess.
say it was copper.
No, yes, that's what one would think, and that's because we make most things with copper. But I think if they want to make a joint, sometimes they'll make they'll something in gold, and they'll say it will transmit the electricity faster. So it's not impossible that gold transmits the best, and then it's silver. You have silver solder. So it's not impossible, and we can check this. So I think gold transmits the best, then silver, and then copper. And with the arc, the silver, the gold on the inside and out, that could build up a fantastic static electricity, and the shock could be tremendous.
Interesting.
I think that's worth investigating. Just the idea of it. That we do think copper, but copper, because it's the most common and it's the least expensive from the other two. Another comment I'd like to make.
Well, but maybe that would be able to sustain the energy of God descending and coming in and meeting him in the ark of the covenant. Maybe it had to be gold to be able to handle that kind of power. I don't know.
If you don't know,
Then don't say.
Miriam, you know, uh, I never liked to, and why I'm going to say this, I don't know.
You never liked what?
He hasn't finished.
I don't like to, but I'm going to say something that that was brought up, and why I'm saying this, I don't know. I usually don't. You know, we're talking about giving, and I'm not sure what you're giving. You know, to give to a poor person would be bread. To give to a rich person, you can't give him money or silver. He has tons of that. Kindness. Kindness would be the best gift to give to a person who requires it, what they require. Because when you think of giving, you're thinking of money. But it's not. But friendship and kindness and loving kindness has many aspects. Okay, now the other thing is, there was a jest made or whatever that to do someone's teeth. We don't have to mention his name. That Jerry would do your teeth. Miriam, did you hear that the word came up that Jerry would do your teeth?
Oh, yeah, right.
Who said it?
Peggy.
I did.
So, I mean, you said it in like a far-fetched idea. I just want you to know, and why I'm saying this, I do not know. I do not know. But, you know, once when I was giving a gift for an aliyah, I used to say a matana. And I told the religious guy, I'm doing a matana, a gift. And he said, why don't you say the amount? I said, well, it's a touch above the average, and I don't want to be like a big shot or a small shot. So I say a gift, you know. So actually, I'm doing it between Hashem and me. So he says,
Right.
no. He said you should say what you're giving. I'm going to give you a second. If you're giving a gift, let's say in the 80 or 90% percentile, right? Right. So he said you should mention it. And why? He says, so you'll encourage other people. Now there's 17 ways to take this. Like there's always a million ways to do things. Do you say it? You want to seem you're big, you're not humble, and yet you're encouraging. So when you do something, you're encouraging. So again, I'm going to say something hopefully by way of encouragement. It was mentioned, I believe in jest, but sometimes truth is said in jest. And it was mentioned that I would do your teeth, Miriam.
Mhm.
I want you to know that is not as far-fetched as people could think. That I have done and sought out, in fact, certain families and asked a certain person to send me a family in need, that I asked for the family that they should send me a family, and I did do their teeth and different amounts. So Peggy, you said that in jest, I believe, but it's there was more truth to it. It's not impossible. It may very, very, very well have happened. Did you understand what I said?
I don't understand what you mean.
Okay, yes. Yes, I'm trying to. Yes, you said Jerry will do your teeth. Yes, I might have done her teeth and not charge her the going rate.
Yeah, but that's in the past. We're talking about future.
Yes, but the way you said it, it was like an impossibility. As a matter of
Well,
fact,
yeah, because you don't have an office anymore. You're not working anymore.
yeah, but shouldn't be. You have to take it to the next level. That is what you're doing now is a base level where you're at a higher level. You're at a higher level in your belief and everything. You're in a higher level.
No,
So
I think I'm just speaking practically.
yes, you're being practical, but we're not in a practical level here. In our belief in loving kindness is, and the belief in general is not a practical level. It's a saintly level.
Okay.
So the idea that uh, I may have, as a matter of fact, I was thinking, as a matter of fact, believe it or not, I was thinking in some way to advise and help with teeth presently. But that is not what I'm trying to get across.
Okay.
Trying to get across that in my office, person like Miriam and people, not a ton of people, were able to avail themselves of my services, and
I know that. And we spoke about that.
we did it,
Yes.
and that I gave with a willing heart and love.
That's
That's
wonderful.
great. That's wonderful.
That's wonderful.
So the question is, you're telling me it's wonderful, so that's bothering me a little bit. Why I mentioned it, I didn't do it to get the compliment. That's what I didn't want to do, and that's why I was hesitant to say this in the first place.
Right. I understand, but you don't have that office anymore.
Um,
Otherwise I would send her over to you.
But
no, I
Peggy,
need implants.
but
Yeah.
Peggy, it's we're transcending the office in our talking here,
Yeah.
where it's above that. The
Okay.
office is practical, and you're being very practical, but
Are you talking about how gifts and bringing your offerings to the tabernacle, like we've been reading, could also be expressed in your field of the dental world, where you've done in the past? That was your gift. That's
yes,
what you're saying?
well, I'm not saying I didn't think of it as that. I just did it to do it. I didn't think of it that I'm doing a gift to meet my obligation.
No, I don't mean obligate. You did it out of your heart to help another person.
Which is wonderful. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think why I did it. I didn't do it to help the other person so much. The other person was the means to the end.
And what was the end?
The end was, or the reason was, you have to grasp this if you can. I think you can. is that I wanted to do something. I insisted myself to do something, to 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 make up for something that maybe I didn't do that was right or something, but I did it for myself. The best things that you do are for yourself. If you wanted to make a picture or help someone, the primary person you're doing it for is for yourself and Hashem, if that's the way you think. You cannot do anything good for someone else. I'm just making a blanket statement here, and Miriam is into sociology, philosophy, psychology. You cannot do anything good for someone else if you don't do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do something really well, you have to do it for yourself. What do you think about that, Peggy? You have to think about this.
Are you saying that you have to be, let's say, not whole, a whole person, but that nothing could come out of a totally broken person? Is that what you're saying? Like it's a way of, anyway, I'm not sure. I'm trying to think out loud.
What I'm saying is, if this topic is not good, we can leave it. What I'm saying is that everything you do in life, you do for your own happiness.
Okay, I think I know what you might be saying, that even when you give, it fulfills something in you that, oh, I'm a good person type of thing, like it increases your self-image type of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we don't have to go, that's a little bit lower self-image and I'm a good person. I'm at a higher plane, but think about this and I'll think about it again another time. When you do something, there's only one act which is considered the least selfish. But every act a human does is selfish. The only act that is perhaps not selfish or the least selfish, which is almost impossible to do, is a mother bearing her life for her child. That's the one act that could be the least selfish in the world.
Doing what for her child?
A mother is sacrificing herself for her child. A mother doing for her child is one of the least selfish acts in the world, even though the children are sometimes.
What about a person dying to save another person?
Well, that's another act, but they're still doing it for themselves. And you remind me about the story with Sidney Carton in A Tale of Two Cities. He says, what I do is better than I have ever done. Do you remember that?
I remember the last line.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where
the thing
I
that
go,
I've done is than I've ever done before.
Right. So, and you see, I just started this right now because you just brought it up. And you see, in his mind, he's telling himself what he's doing a good act. He's doing it for the other person, but he's doing it for himself. Anyhow, I'm going to come end this your conversation and just saying.
Well, I'm not sure how he's doing for himself because he was going to his death.
Well, this is I'm going to let us think about, because this can go on. If you want to talk about it more, it's fine with me. I didn't want to take up your time with this, but he's going to his death, but he's doing it for himself. This act is, look it up, you'll see it says it's something that he's done that he's never done before, and he's doing it for himself.
He's doing it for her because that's true love.
Himself. She is the recipient, but he's doing it for himself. It's an act that
it's selfless.
It's an act, he says, something I've done that he's never done for himself. He's doing it for himself. She's the recipient, but and it could be the reason, but he's doing it for himself. This is a little bit hard it's an idea which is not immediately evident. I understand where you're coming, Peggy. It's a little bit hard to.
I rescued somebody.
Yes, Brian?
I rescued somebody.
You rescued somebody?
I ran out of the street to save this child that was about to run into the street when nobody was watching. And I didn't. I say sometimes they thank you when they want to do for you, and I didn't take any compensation for rescuing the child.
That's wonderful, Brian.
How did you rescue the child, Brian?
Child was running the street. Everybody wasn't watching, and I ran and I grabbed him, pulled him away from.
How old were you?
That's when my knees didn't hurt me.
How old were you?
How old were you?
Around 20 something.
Okay, I want you to think very clearly, Brian, if you can. And I have confidence in you to ask you a question. Would you say, think. Would you say that you say to yourself, I must do this or I must rescue the child? Which do you think was in your mind?
It wasn't in my mind. I knew that how the situation was. I didn't have to think about it. That child was headed to be hit by a car, and I ran to get it. Didn't think about it.
Well,
That's what God, that's the message of we will do and we will hear. You do first. You don't stop and think about it. It's instinctive, and that's the
If you
level.
don't accept if they when they get, thank you, I'll give you anything for my child. We don't take no money for the rescue.
And I like the way you brought that in, Peggy. I like the way you associated that statement. That's very, very good.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
That's the way God wants us to be with him. That it's an instinctive trusting in him, and everything comes from that.
yeah, that's the way people want us, but as you said earlier, it's not always easy to attain that frame of mind.
No, it takes years and years. It's a process. It took the Israelites, as we're going to see, 38 years in the desert of constant trials and testing and constant testing. And yet, even in the end, just as they were about to take it, to go in and take the land, you have 12 spies, and only 2 of the 12 had that instinctive nature to put God first and to say, we can do it. We're going to go ahead. That was Joshua and Caleb, a Jew and a Gentile. All the other 10, they lived in fear still.
I'll just give you one more example. I'm not sure how long. When an artist draws a painting, makes a picture, just trying to get this across, he's not thinking how much the people are going to like it. He's thinking of how much he loves it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. I think
Exactly.
I finally got to, like the Rubens and this one. They're not thinking, well, the public is going to love this. He loves it.
No, he can't help himself.
There
These
you
are
go.
gifts. These are gifts that have been placed within us. Each of us have been given gifts because we each have a purpose. And our gifts are going to be used toward that purpose. And if we don't use the gifts, they'll die out.
Now I'll ask you another question. When you sing, sang, or sung, whatever, when you sing first to please yourself, that you want to get on tune and you love yourself. And if the other people like it, it's an addition. But you want to please yourself first.
It's the only way that it'll work.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because when I do it and I'm focused on the others, there has to be a balance, of course, but when I'm focused on how they're receiving it and accepting, then I lose myself. I can't do my best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't explain myself. It took me a while. It took us a while to come to this understanding of what I'm saying.
Right.
But so now we're there. Miriam,
now we're there. Yes, Brian.
When I had this work washing dishes, they put me through a test to see if my dishes were clean, and I cleaned the dishes so clean that when the city had their inspectors come, they were clean. There was no hidden left on food on my dishes.
Well, there's one thing about you is that you definitely OCD. So if you're going to do something well, you do it really well. And if you're going to do something terrible, you'll do it really terrible.
Yeah.
Miriam.
Yeah.
My dear Miriam, and I've said in proper way, are you eligible for dentistry now in Canada? there's eligibility for dentistry.
Yes, she
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
course
that,
it-
that'll get done for, that's, I
Pardon?
think, covers cavities and teeth cleaning,
Yeah,
etc.
it doesn't cover implants.
No,
It-
listen.
No,
Im-
no, that I'm okay for. I
Yeah.
have the card.
Okay, so why don't you avail yourself
Yeah,
of?
I will soon. In the next few weeks, I'm doing, anyway, yeah,
Well, you
definitely.
see, I did see it did
All
come
right,
up.
well, this is a topic that we talk about another time off the screen
Oh,
here.
do you want me to show you the pill thing?
I
What
feel
pill thing?
I have my tooth fixed,
Just
but I
hold
need
on 1 second. Talk for 1 more second. Just 1 more second.
What are you talking about, Miriam?
Just 1 second.
What does this have to do with our study?
Well,
my chip.
you like a lot of comments, Peggy. So you should call us back and we should talk about this on a Zoom meeting.
What happened to your tooth, Brian?
It was chipped, and I had a little visit under this new program, and they fixed the tooth.
I have that, Miriam.
Oh, this is the one you have?
I have
fixed
it.
the tooth.
What is
Yeah.
what is that?
That removes the pills from your sweater. But if you don't hold it, if you hold it a certain way, it'll pull a thread or it'll pull.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
you
have
got
to
to be
be
careful. I
careful.
have that.
yeah, you have to be careful.
Yeah,
Okay.
you have to be careful. It's very good. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
my friends, I'm going to say
Okay,
good night and
how
thank
it
you for
relates?
joining.
How it relates? How this subject relates to bring it into our Torah study? This relates to doing things for people and loving kindness. So we'll bring it all around.
Yes, well, that's the thing we always have to do. There's no doubt about it. There's that expression in Hebrew, midah keneged midat. You get what you give. So the more we learn to give and to do for others, the more that will come our way. But it's not the reason we do it. But the more we give, the more we end up wanting to give because we see that it is a beautiful circle. It's an infinite circle that doesn't end. Anyway, Brian, nice to see you. Jerry, good to see you. Miriam, thank you for your input, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you again, God willing, next week. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom and thank you.
You're
More
very
input.
welcome. What?
The little robot is short circuit. More input, more input.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Good night.